Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be continuing the reporting of my co-reporters. We already here in 1935 Constitution, the Constitutional Convention delegates, which was happened last May 14, 1935. So, based on the provisions of the Tidings-McDuffie Law of 1934, a constitution were needed to be drafted by a constitutional convention and to be ratified by the Filipino people prior to the establishment of the Commonwealth government. So, you already know what is Tidings-McDuffie Law, right? Tinatawag ding Philippine Commonwealth and Independence Act noong 1934. Ang batas ng US na nagtadhana para sa kalayaan ng Pilipinas. So, it's stated here, ang isang konstitusyon ay kailangan ng bumalangkas ng isang constitutional convention at upang pagtibayin ang sambayan ng Pilipino bago pagkatatag ng Commonwealth government. So, ang Commonwealth government is, it's like a Commonwealth refers to any group of people organized under a single government, particularly in the republic. If you live in the United States of America, you live in a Commonwealth. So, that's it. So, on July 10, 1934, the Filipino elected 202 delegates to the Constitutional Convention. So, Constitutional Convention ay yung mga taong tagatugon ng problema ng mahinang sentral ng pamahalaan. So, during July 10, ang taga-Constitutional Convention nag-elect for the president sa Constitution. So, on July 30, 1934, the convention was formally inaugurated with Claro M. Recto as president. So, si Claro M. Recto is the president of the 1934 Constitutional Convention. So, on July 30, siya na ang president sa Constitutional Convention. Si Claro M. Recto is a Senate minority leader, a Filipino politician, jurist, and poet. So, the convention immediately began its work and took inspiration in drafting the charter from the Biak na Bato Constitution, the Malolos Constitution, the Philippine Bill of 1902, the Jones Law of 1916. So, Biak na Bato was created at a truce between Spanish colonial governor General Fernando Primo de Rivera and the revolutionary leader Emilio Aguinaldo to end the Philippine Revolution. So, the political constitution in 1899, informally known as the Malolos Constitution, was the constitution of the First Republic Philippine. No? So, the framers, however, were too careful not to include provisions in the proposed constitution that may be declared as anti-American by the United States authorities. No? Ang framers, those are people na a person who shapes or creates a concept of plan or system. So the framers, gituyo nila nga idili i-include sa provision ang anti-American para sila ay malayang makagalaw what do you call this? Kanabang it's like the parity rights where Americans are given the same rights with the Filipino to exploit the natural resources of the Philippines. So dahil ang mga framers kanang ilan ang giplanuhan nga dili i-apil sa constitution ng anti-American, that's why natagaan sila the same rights nga exploit ang natural resources sa Pilipinas. So for this, the 1935 Constitution contained provisions that are favorable to the American interest like the parity rights. So mauna na siya. The draft of the Constitution was approved with amendments on January 31, 1935. It was written in English and in Spanish. So pagtatag na sa mga provision ni it was January 31 nga gisuwat siya in English and Spanish. So on February 8, 1935, the Constitutional Convention approved the Constitution by a vote of 177 in favor and 1 against. The lone delegate who voted against approval of the Constitution was Tomas Cabili of Lanao. So out of 177 in favor, si Tomas Cabili of Lanao lang ang wala nag-approve sa inani na provision. So si Tomas Cabili of Lanao, he was the only one delegate against So, in 1938, Cabili was re-elected to the Second National Assembly. So, the Constitution was brought to Washington by Quezon, Recto, and Roxas for approval of the President of the United States in accordance with the provisions of the Tidings-McDuffie Law of 1934. The President Franklin Delano Roosevelt approved the Constitution on March 29, 1935. So, mao na ni siya na time nga na-approve na ang katong provision. The Constitution was approved by the Filipino people for ratification through a plebiscite held on May 14, 1935. The Filipinos approved the Constitution by a vote of 1,213,046 and 44,963 voting against it. So, for the first time in Philippine history, the woman voted in the plebiscite in ratifying the 1935 Constitution. It divided the government into three co-equal branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. Okay, the executive power was vested in the President of the Philippines, who would be elected directly by the people to serve for a term for 4 years, can be elected for another 4-year term. So it's stated So this is the executive. So the legislative power was vested in the Congress of the Philippines, composed of the Senate with 20 and the House of Representatives, composed of not more than 120 members, representing the different provinces of the country with a term of 4 years. The judicial power was vested in the Supreme Court and other inferior courts as may be established by law. So that's it. That is all about the 1935 Constitution. Sige, balik ta sa dadto sa kaning co-equal branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. So the executive power, ito yung mga tao, the person or branch of government responsible for putting policies or laws into effect. So sila ang gawid ani is ang executive. Sa ang legislative power naman is having the power or performing the function of legislating, no, belonging to the branch of government that is charged with such powers as making laws, collecting taxes, and making financial appropriations. Ang judicial laws, it is the power was nang magvested in the Supreme Court and the other inferior courts as may be established by law. Now, its duty is to settle actual controversies involving rights which are legally demandable and enforceable. So that is for the co-equal branches. So we're moving here in the 1943 Constitution. These are the 1935 Constitution nota bene. The 1935 Constitution has 18 articles. So anyway, this is just an overview so that you will know the articles. So Article 1, we have the national territory. Article 2, Declaration of Principles. This is under the 1935 Constitution. So Article 3, Bill of Rights. Article 4, Citizenship. Article 5, Suffrage. Article 6, Legislative Department. Article 7, Executive Department. Article 8, Judicial Department. Article 9, Impeachment. Article 10, General Auditing Office. Article 11, Civil Service. Article 12, Conservation and Utilization of Natural Resources. Article 13, General Provisions. Article 14, Amendments. Article 15, Transitory Provisions. Article 16, Special Provisions effective upon the proclamation of the independence of the Philippines. Article 17, the Commonwealth and the Republic. Article 18, Ordinance appended to the Constitution. Okay, we already here in 1943 Constitution. So, on January 23, 1942, General Masaharu Homma, the Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Imperial Army in the Philippines, renamed the national government as a central administrative organization. General Homma also issued an order to George Vargas, who was then the acting mayor of Manila, and appointed him as the chairman of newly created Executive Commission. All the commissions report directly to the chairman of the Executive Commission. Okay, this is during the Japanese colonial. General Masaharu Homma was the commander in charge of the Japanese Imperial Forces during the first battles for the Philippines. No? He served in the Philippines from December 1941 through August 1942. It was Homa who forced and accepted the surrender of the Americans at Bataan. So, which invaded the Philippines. No, nagplant po sila ani na time. So, then on January 29, 1942, the Council of the State was created as an advisory body to the chairman of the Executive Commission. So during January 29, diri nag-state ang advisory sa chairman of the Executive Commission nga si George Vargas, no, sa ang acting mayor sa during ni siya sa pamala pa sa mga Japanese. So here, so the Japanese military authorities saw the difficulty of gaining the trust and cooperation of the people with the present setup of the national government. As such, they deemed it necessary to grant Philippine independence soon as part of their propaganda efforts in gaining Filipino support and cooperation. Since pag sumanatog sakop sa taga-American, dili na ang mga Pinoy, dili na sila madali-dali nga motuo, no, so kay mag-expect na sila nga mga invaders jud dayon. So ang mga taga-Japanese, which is nagipanguluhan ni General Masaharu Homa, nagpagawa sila propaganda nga dalion ang pag-grant sa Philippine independence para ma-gain ang trust sa mga taga-Filipino. But then ang mga Pinoy kanang naana jud sila laing technique para dili na tatawagan na ma-invade sa laing mga tagagawas. So on June 18, 1943, the kapisanan ng paglilingkod sa bagong Pilipinas or Calibapi was tasked to inform the Preparatory Commission for the Philippines Independence. So Calibapi was created during sa Japanese period. So, the Constitution provided for a numerical National Assembly on September 20, 1943. Delegates on the legislature were elected. On September 25, 1943, the legislature elected Jose Pasiano Laurel as President of the Republic of the Philippines. Jose Pasiano Laurel was a Filipino politician, lawyer, and judge who served as the President of the Japanese-occupied or the Second Philippine Republic, a puppet state during World War II from 1943 to 1945. Okay, gayon pa man hindi na naig ang mga taga-Hapon sa kanilang plano, no? Dahil sa katotohanan na ito ay naging epektibo lamang kasunod ng mga dikta ng mananakop sa Hapon. So, wala na mituo ang mga taga-Pilipino sa propaganda sa nga dalion nila ang pag-run sa Philippine Independence. So, tungod ay tungod pod sa pag-elect ni Jose Pasiano Laurel as President of the Philippines, no, dili na madali og tuwang mga Pinoy, no. After the liberation of the Philippines and the restoration of the Commonwealth government, the 1943 Constitution became a mere scrap of paper in the eyes of the Filipinos. So during the 1943 Constitution ay napasawalang bahala, no, because of ang mga Pilipino ay gipatatag jud nila ang Calibapi na group because kanang wala na nila gilet na ang other taga-bansa maklaim pa nga atong mga resources here in Philippines. So these are the articles during 1943 Constitution, no? So Article 1, we have the Republic of the Philippines. 2, the Executive. Article 3, the Legislature. Article 4, the Judiciary. Article 5, Impeachment. Article 6, Citizenship. Article 2, Duties and Rights of the Philippines. Article 3, Conservation and Utilization of Natural Resources. Article 9, General Provisions. Article 10, Amendments. Article 11, Transitory Provisions. And Article 12, Special Provisions. So, these are the Constitution, the 1943 Constitution. So, we're moving here in 1973 Constitution. Okay. Okay, we already here in 1973 Constitution, which was happened last January 17, 1973. So this is the 1973 Constitution. After the declaration of martial law in 1972, Ferdinand Edelin Marcos reconvened the 1971 Constitutional Convention to continue the task of framing a new charter. So pagkatapos ng deklarasyon ng batas militar, muling tinawag ni Ferdinand Edelin Marcos ang 1971 Constitutional Convention upang ipagpatuloy ang kanilang gawain. So on November 29, 1972, the final draft was finished and was presented to Marcos on December 1972. Marcos then scheduled a plebiscite to ratify the Constitution on January 15 to January 17, 1973. So, noong Nobyembre 29, natapos ang pinal na borador at iniharap kay Marcos noong Disyembre 1972. No? So, Marcos and his cohorts convened the barangay assemblies and called the voters in every barangay including the youth. So, si Marcos at ang kanyang mga kasamahan ay nagpatawag ng mga barangay assemblies at tinawag ang mga botante sa bawat barangay kasama na ang mga kabataan. So, the people in the assembly supposedly voted to ratify the Constitution, which was our handiwork of Marcos. Based on the records released by Malacanang, 95% of those present approved the new charter. Now, on this basis, Marcos signed the new constitution and declared its ratification on January 17, 1973. So, ang mga tao daw sa kapulungan ay bumuto upang pagtibayan ang constitution na gawa ni Marcos. So, batay sa mga tala ng inilabas ng Malacanang, 95% ng mga naroon ang nag-aproba sa bagong charter. Sa batayan na ito, nilagdaan ni Marcos ang bagong konstitusyon. So, the legal luminaries of this country opposed to Marcos assailed the validity of the 1973 Constitution, especially in the manner it was ratified. However, the Supreme Court, which at that time was beholden to Marcos, instead of upholding the majesty of the law and of equity, ruled on January 22, 1973, that the question of legality was moot and academic. These controversial decisions of the Supreme Court lead to the resignation of Chief Justice Roberto Concepcion. Daghan disagree sa Constitution ni Marcos. However, during his time, pabor Japon saya ang Supreme Court, no? Ang mga gayon pa man ang Korte Suprema na noong panahong iyon ay nakatalaga kay Marcos halip na itaguyod ang kamahalan ng batas at katarungan. At nagpa siya noong Enero 22, 1973, no? Nang usapin ng legalidad ay pagtatalunan. Tungod sa controversies, no, sa desisyon sa Korte Suprema, humantong sa pagbitiw ni Chief Justice Roberto Concepcion. So si Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Roberto Concepcion, he was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines from June 17, 1966 until April 18, 1973. So, he was the Chief Justice before, during the time of Marcos. So, sa kanya, ang mabigat na pasanin ng paghahangad na mapanatili ang kalayaan ng Korte Suprema mula sa mga pagtatangka ng diktador na kontrolin nito. So, the 1973 Constitution, established a parliamentary form of government with the Prime Minister as the chief executive. The legislative power was vested in the unicameral National Assembly. The right of suffrage was made compulsory to all qualified voters. After the 1973 Constitution was established and ang legislative power declared once again an assembly. Now, ang karapatan sa pagboto ay ginawang sapilitan sa lahat ng mga kwalipikadong botante. So, the 1973 Constitution also abolished the party rights provisions of the 1935 Constitution, thus allowing only Filipino citizens to own real property and exploit the natural resources of this country. So during 1973, napawala ang party rights, no, during sa pamamahala ni Marcos. So, inalis din ng the 1970 Constitution had undergone several amendments to suit the desires, whim, and caprices of the Marcos government. So, ang Constitution ng 1973 ay sumailalim sa ilang mga pagbabago upang umangkop sa mga hangarin ng pamahalaang Marcos. So, in 1976, an amendment was made which created the Interim Batasang Pambansa or IBP with more than 120 members, including Marcos. Marcos was also empowered by the 1973 Constitution to appoint sectoral representatives and his cabinet to the Batasang Pambansa. So, Marcos was also given power ng 1973 Constitution. So, the interim Batasang Pambansa was the legislature of the Republic of the Philippines. So, nagsilbi itong transitional legislative body na pinag-utos ng 1973 Constitution habang ang Pilipinas ay lumipat mula sa presidential tungo sa semi-presidential na anyo ng gobyerno. So, these amendments were submitted to the people in plebiscite on October 16 to 17, 1976. As expected, more than 90% of the people allegedly ratified the amendments based on the data release on by Malacanang and as reported by the Marcos-controlled media. So, ang mga susog nito ay isinumiti during sa October 16, 17, 1976. No? Gaya nga ng inasahan, higit sa 90% ng mga tao ang sumang-ayon kay Marcos. No? On January 30, 1980, another plebiscite was conducted to ratify the amendments which extended the retirement age of the justices of the Supreme Court from 65 to 70 years old, purportedly to bar the liberal and progressive justices from becoming Chief Justice. So, noong Enero 30, 1980, another law na po siya nga migawas, no, which is under Japon sa 1973 Constitution, that the retirement age of the justices of the Supreme Court, it should be 65 to 70 years old, na sinasabing humadlang sa mga liberal at progresibong maestrado na naging punong maestrado. So, this was the 1973 Constitution, and this is the 17 articles now during 1973 Constitution. So we have the national territory, Article 1, Article 2, Declaration of Principles and State Policies, Article 3, Citizenship, Article 4, Bill of Rights, Article 5, Duties and Obligation of Citizens, Article 6, Suffrage, Article 7, the President, Article 8, the Batasang Pambansa, Article 9, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet and the Executive Committee, Article 10, the Judiciary, Article 11, Local Government, Article 12, the Constitutional Commissions, Article 13, Accountability of Public Officers, Article 14, the National Economy and the Patrimony of the Nation, Article 15, General Provisions, Article 16, Amendments, Article 17, Transitory Provisions. So, that would be all, guys. Thank you for listening, and may God bless us all.